Hi everybody, Dana Litwin here again, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. This week, a topic that is probably more focused on my American audience and leaders of volunteers, although I think that there are some tips and actions, ideas to action that will be helpful wherever you are in the world if you are in a situation where your local or national government is seriously cutting or compromising social safety nets and making political decisions that negatively impact nonprofits in your community. It's happening very intensely in America right now, but it's also occurring in different parts around the world as well. Just so you know the basics of what's required. Starting in January in 2026, Americans who receive SNAP, supplemental nutritional program benefits, so food stamps is another common term for it, but to get SNAP benefits and continue to get the benefits that people have been literally not starving to death on, been surviving on very, very basically for many years, someone has to work 80 hours a week. So this is mandatory volunteering, which is not generally a good idea. And it's also crossing the line, the amount of hours, into forced labor. This is a very intensely impactful, not just on the people who are receiving the benefits, but this is going to have a very intense and probably not very fun impact on nonprofits who suddenly need to take on more volunteers at 20 hours a week each. There's other ways that people can qualify. This is from the USDA website. You're excused from the general work requirements for any of these things already working at least 30 hours a week, meeting work requirements in another program, like being on unemployment, taking care of a child under 6 or an incapacitated person unable to work due to a physical or mental limitation, participating regularly in a substance abuse recovery program, or studying in school or training program at least half-time. However, college students are subject to different eligibility rules. And there's a slightly different thing for able-bodied adults without dependents category. For people who are 18 to 54, able to work and don't have any dependents, you might need to meet both the general work requirements and an additional work requirement to get SNAP for more than 3 months in 3 years, which is time limit. So again, people are scrambling to do this for just a few months of benefits within a 3-year program to not starve to death. People are excused if they are experiencing homelessness, if they're a veteran, and also if they've someone who's grown up in the foster system that are still age 24 or younger, even if they're out of the foster system at their 18th birthday. So at least kids that have been stuck growing up in the system have a few years. So that's the SNAP requirements, at least 80 hours a month. That's a lot of volunteering. Many volunteer roles do not have one person doing 80 hours of work a month. So this is a big change for your organization. Also, as part of this same series of bills, for Medicaid, for basic health care, this section requires beginning not later than the first quarter after December 31st, 2026, or earlier at the option of the state, putting an asterisk on that one. Individuals who are eligible for Medicaid as part of the Medicaid expansion population to engage in community service, work, or other activities in order to qualify for Medicaid. This is from a legal site that I will link to below, and also link to the USDA requirements for SNAP. But from this legal site, the effective date by December 31st, 2026 means that many states who are politically aligned to chop up social safety nets and just let people do whatever and suffer are probably going to institute the Medicaid requirement earlier in 2026. The latest, it would be January 2027. So late 2026, early 2027 is when the Medicaid aspect, so that's possibly more people having to come in to do mandatory volunteering to get their health care. There is a possibility that the 2026 November elections shift things, but probably not in time to change these policies, since once laws are created, they typically roll out a year or two later for several years. There's also the possibility that some states enact lawsuits to delay or cancel that part of it, or they come up with their own programs in California that kind of help offset that so that it's not so much a work requirement, but there's a state level healthcare. And I think Oregon and Washington are as well. What to do as a leader of volunteers? This is a lot. It's already an overwhelming time of year, but prepare for more paperwork, and as much as possible, improve. Now is the time to improve your record keeping and your data tracking, because those systems, if you don't have those good record keeping and data tracking in place, the new paperwork that you're going to have to do for SNAP recipients and Medicaid, Medicare recipients is going to also be burdensome. If you already have voluntold, like high school students or court-referred volunteers, then hopefully that system can be easily adapted for SNAP and then later Medicaid tracks of mandatory volunteers as well. And keep in mind to please communicate what is going on and why to staff and volunteers. Make sure they understand what is happening, that there could be an influx of people who need to do a lot more work than is typical of volunteers in your agency, perhaps. You can also decide as an agency that we can't accommodate this. We require volunteers that need a lot of training or whatever else may be required, that it's not going to work. So that's a decision that as a policy needs to be made pretty much as soon as possible now that we're into December. It's not the person's fault that they are forced to work with you. They're probably doing their best to find something that they kind of want to do, but you also could, like, this is forced labor, this is mandatory volunteering. They may have very understandable fears or frustrations or resentments at the situations. Be kind and compassionate, do your best to improve accessibility, and be ready to accommodate any variety of mental and physical abilities, especially when the Medicaid requirement kicks in later in 2026 or early 2027. Remember the core 3 C's of happy volunteers: comfort, convenience, connection. It's more important than ever that you remember that every interaction with a volunteer is an invitation to stay or an invitation to go. And yes, it is absolutely possible that some new mandatory volunteers may really connect with your mission and your organization and cause, and that they want to keep volunteering even if there's no more requirements for this. We also want to make sure that we're not just creating busy work for the sake of a government churn of red tape and paperwork, that the work is still meaningful if you're able to accommodate taking a SNAP or Medicare recipient up to 20 hours a week or more. Take action. Text, call, email your local congresspeople and senators if you're in the states with pressure to remove these barriers and these attacks that have been occurring under this administration on the nonprofit sector especially. Take action by partnering with organizations that are already been doing work to change policies for better social safety nets. So you don't have to reinvent a wheel or reinvent a system. See who else is doing this and how can you support each other and be mutually beneficial. Take action. Advocate with data-driven results. So report up to any and all people in power that will listen of these are the negative impacts on the community as a direct result of these policies or this work requirement. And also, if you are able to, in whatever way, whether that's in person or supporting online, help with very focused protests against, again, either policies or politicians that are making lives more difficult for just about everybody at this rate. So I hope you found these Tuesday tips useful. I know it's a lot of stuff. I'll put the links below. Please subscribe to this channel if you have not yet already. Like this video. That does help me out quite a bit in giving these free videos and information to all of you as my peers and colleagues and friends of Leaders of Volunteers. And hit the little bell alert to know when I have new videos uploaded. I have a lot of great guests coming up in 2026, and it's not all bad news. I'll have some other Tuesday tips next week about some recent research at internationally and in the UK, and some other great topics coming up in January and beyond. So I hope you have a great rest of the week. Take care.